How would you describe, and again, we are partly looking at some data, partly making observations, partly just using our own intuition. How would you describe the local feeling about what the Trump administration is doing in DC?
I mean, I think I could tell you obviously like what I feel from like people that I interview on a daily basis, kind of going around the city to like just kind of getting the scene of things. And then thankfully the Washington Post recently did a local poll, and the poll was, I honestly was surprised by how strongly people felt in opposition to what Trump is doing. It was like 8 in 10 residents don't agree with his idea, with his nationalizing, his federalizing MPD and rolling out the National Guard. They think it's a bad idea. Also support for statehood is at like 72% or something like that. Just across the board, DC residents, like there was kind of something approaching consensus that what he's doing doesn't make sense and they don't support, that there needs to be a change in the structure of the city at some point so that there is representation, that there is, you know, more actual autonomy in local in government. At the same time, like, there is still concern over crime. I mean, I think it's a city. You know, crime is always going to be something that people are concerned about, but also showed that concern has gone down since 23 when it was really, really bad. So, you know, that matched with like every time I'm talking to people, that's kind of what I think where people are. You know, they're like, yes, I'm still concerned about crime. I'm still annoyed about, you know, people stealing packages off the porch, or, you know, definitely the carjackings when they happen. I mean, those things bother people. But they still believe that like the best people to solve that are locals, not the feds.
What do locals say they want in terms of crime intervention?
That's again, I mean, this is a really diverse, albeit pretty left-leaning, liberalish town. So you definitely have folks, and you see this actually more, and I think we got to respect this, like in communities east of the Anacostia River, which are predominantly black, more low income, largely low income, and probably where the majority of the worst crime happens historically, at least like homicides, it's worst over there. There, you see all the polling there shows, and if you go over there too, like they want more police. It's not that they want, you know.
It's all right.
It's not.
We're in a city.
Yeah, that's true. It's not that they want police who are just free to do whatever the hell they want, but they want presence, and they want a sense that these are police. You know, they want police officers walking the beat. They just want to know that they call the cops, they're going to show up more quickly, that sort of stuff. And I 100% respect that. But there's also like a recognition in those communities, and also like in wider communities, that the crime that you're seeing isn't just solvable by cracking down and cracking heads. Like, you have to address some of the root causes. Now, it can't just all be root causes, and it can't just all be like, well, there's no consequences. I think there's a recognition that you have to have consequences, but you're only going to get so far if all you're doing is saying, well, we're going to, you know, throw people in prison for life sentences.
How bad is crime in DC?
How bad is crime in DC?
How do you, guys, I get this question all the time. How do you answer it?
It's such a tough one, because I think I watched one of your recent videos where you addressed it too. And it's like, look, in my personal experience, 25 years in DC, I got robbed once by a bunch of kids by the Potomac Gardens housing development, which is not too far away from here. It was at night. I didn't have a lot of money on me, so they didn't get much. They didn't want my cards. They just wanted some cash. I gave them the cash. I found out after the fact that they used a fake gun. Now it was dark. I didn't know this. That was my one experience with crime. But it took me like a week before I could walk outside feeling comfortable. Maybe a little bit longer than that. Since then, it's been pretty chill. I mean, I've seen things here and there, but like nothing. Thankfully, I've never been a victim. Neither is my wife. Neither is my kids. That being said, I know people who have been victims of crime, and I can understand how that instantly colors your perception of everything. If you've been carjacked, I don't think I'd want to drive, and I think every time I drove, I would think everybody pulling up to me was going to carjack me. So that's really powerful. That being said, like, you have to balance that against the reality of numbers, knowing that numbers are always going to be imperfect and people can fudge data, but you know, like, you can't fudge homicide numbers, really. And like, homicides have been going down. Are they still too high? Of course, but they're lower than they were, and so like, we have to base some judgment on progress. It can't just be absolute. So like, yeah, we want 0 homicides, but if you judged everything on 0 homicides, this entire country would be lost. I mean, we'd be fucked.
Yeah. It seems like potentially I don't know, almost a petulant point to make, but I never want to dismiss people's concerns about crime, right? Because they are real, and you know, anybody who's lived in the city long enough, crime will touch you. It's just a reality. At the same time, the loudest critics of DC I don't know if they can live in civilization, right? They can't deal with the, because partly civilization is messy, especially the way that the American experiment does it. Do you believe that there's something to that there are some people who are just fundamentally not situated to live in closer, denser, more diverse communities?
I think what it is, I think you're kind of onto a good point there, that like if you think about America generally, America has a really long, rich history of, instead of fixing things, you flee. Like, you don't like what's happening, you just move on to the next place. I mean, like the westward expansion, you can talk about the suburban white flight. I mean, historically, people just see problems, and instead of being like, we have to address them, deal with them, work with them, it's like, we're just gonna, move 6 miles up the road and create like a gated enclave, and then everything's gonna be fine. I'm not saying that everybody who's come to DC and now complains about crime, came from the suburbs and lived in these like idyllic situations where the only thing they had to worry about was like Starbucks running out of a certain drink. But I think there is something to be said for the fact that like I think a lot of people, as DC grew and started attracting more and more residents over the last like 10, 15 years, I think you had a lot of people coming from outside who came at the best of times and expected that would be that would be everything from that point on. Like, things couldn't possibly be bad or be rough or go wrong. And that's not the reality of a city. And that's that's every city everywhere. I mean, I'm sorry, like Paris is not perfect. Zurich is not perfect. London is not perfect. None of these places are perfect, and they all have their own types of problems and crimes and whatnot. Now, the one thing I will say about DC, and it's perfectly reflective of the United States, which makes it kind of awesome that it's the nation's capital, it's a very violent place, right? Like, crime is violent here, let's be perfectly honest, but that's not just DC. That is an American problem that America is kind of like, I feel like they've just accepted that's, freedom to own guns, violence. That's just where we are.
Yeah, there's simply no denying that there are certain kinds of crime here that are unfathomable. Yeah. Even in the safest places in America, they're unfathomable to Europeans more broadly. If someone were to ask you what are a few concrete steps that the city could take towards crime, what would you list as like actual genuine priorities?
So, and this is the funny thing, is like right now we're having all these conversations about what the federal government is doing to DC, and my thought has always been, it's about what the federal government can do with DC. Because like, this is a weird place where the federal government and locals coexist. And there's a lot of things that the DC government, the local government does to support the federal government and vice versa. And crime is a really good example of where if they just got together and like dealt with it on a really nerdy, in the weeds sort of level, not a theatrical, like let's roll out the National Guard level, things could change. Like, put it this way, our local court system, in most places, like your local judges would be either appointed by local officials or elected by the people. Here, they're nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. There's perpetually vacancies in Superior Court where like most criminal trials happen, which means things take forever. Things get backed up, like judges have too much work. That's a problem for criminal justice. All the people who come out of prison, well, the people who go to prison in DC has no state prison system, they get sent to federal prison, which is like they could be sent states away and they're further away from their families. They come back and the agency that watches them is a federal agency, not a local agency. So there's like a lot of things that in the criminal justice system that are federal responsibilities because of how DC is set up. And to address crime, you have to address those. So look, DC probably needs more cops. Like, they've lost 500, 600 cops over the last 5 years or so. There's a good argument to be made that more cops have to be hired. But that alone won't do it. And then there's all the other stuff about like generational poverty and the fact that like educational issues and like that has to be handled on a local level. But even, again, government can only do so much with that. I mean, there are things that like at some point, like it's like any place that suffers like urban poverty and crime. Like, government can do a lot, but there's only so much, right?
Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. Please consider giving this a thumbs up as well as liking it. And if you want more of my politics coverage, go to the link in the description box for my Substack. Yes, go to my Substack. We might put a QR code on the screen here as well. Tons of exclusives, interviews, chat functionality with a whole different community over there. Tons of fun stuff. Give it a look.